guys, welcome back to the Journey Not Real Talk. This is the first episode of our four-part series, The Seasons Within, a wellness journey through life where we'll be having cozy conversations with our guest speakers from different generations to explore holistic wellness through the rhythm of the seasons and uncover the kind of wisdom that help us to live well now and prepare for the future without ever having to say, I wish I knew this sooner. In each episode, we share practical and timeless insights to help you take care of your body, mind, and soul, while also guiding you in supporting the health and well-being of your loved ones. So let's join me in exploring how to feel your best in the winter. I'm so excited to be joined today by three incredible women in the fitness and well-being space. Hi, Claire, Janice, Helen. It's such an honor to have you join us today.
Hello. Hello. Hi.
Can you say hi to our audience and share a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're all fit and well. My name is Claire Dreyer, and I am a personal performance coach, and I support women elevating their mindset, fitness, confidence, and styling. Now, I've got a long, long history in the creativity and visual merchandising world. Most recently, spent 10 years at Chanel, but now I've left the corporate world and I'm really following a mission. It's my passion. I've created a 12-week program called the She Fit Mental Strength Solution, which supports women to build their own ambitions and to transform the lives that they're living. So that's what I do, and I'm delighted to be with you guys this evening, talking about a really interesting season, I should say.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claire. Really look forward to your insights in this space. Janice?
I'm Janice Lo. It's a bit hard to describe what I do now because I have many fingers and many pies. So by day, I am still in a 9 to 5 corporate job. So Claire, you are my idol in that sense of releasing yourself from the corporate world. So that's what I'm aiming to do. I've always been very passionate about health and nutrition. I think mostly stemming from my own needs and experiences. So through this journey now, I've become a qualified level 3 nutrition coach. But most recently, I am one of two founders of a company called Matter Wellness, where we are trying to bring a lot of the traditional Chinese medicine, ancient wisdom to the modern world. So we are launching very soon.
Amazing. Thank you, Janice. And last but not least, Helen?
Hello, I'm Helen. I am a health and wellbeing coach, and a bit like Janice, I have several other jobs as well. I'm also a learning mentor and a facilitator, but probably my area of specialism is helping people to find the very best health and wellbeing they can, especially when there are challenges. So when life is difficult and there are obstacles in the way, my specialism is coaching people so that they can just be in the best place that they personally can be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Helen. It's great to have you back in our podcast as well. So I think, guys, winter brings its own unique challenges and lots of, changes in the weather and everything else. And I know our listeners are eager to hear your thoughts about, how to keep fit or how to stay healthy in the winter. So to start with, from your own experience and from working with your clients, what are the top 5 changes people typically experience in their body, energy, and mind in the winter that you have seen? Claire, maybe from your fitness coaching experience, maybe you can share a few with us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think a lot of it starts in this sort of winter sort of season. It's the shorter days, which means we have this, less sunlight. And that really messes with our rhythm and our serotonin levels. And, not only my clients, but myself too, you might have a slower, sluggish morning. Perhaps you might have more sugar cravings, and maybe just feeling like you just can't be bothered. What's really key is to note that it's not laziness, it's biological. And your body is asking for gentler starts to the day, maybe an earlier wind down in the evening. So what's really key for me and for like my fitness and my coaching clients is to ensure that we are adapting our exercise to this season. So in the cold weather, our blood flow reduces, which can make our muscles feel a lot tighter, and we might experience more aches and pains in our joints. And so this is your cue to make sure that you're, doing a little bit more of a longer warm-up period, sort of more deep sort of stretching, and maybe perhaps as well switch your training into a different mix. So think of slower strength work, mobility work, and making sure that you're having deep recovery sessions. So this is kind of like key in how I change my exercise style for the kind of the autumn winter seasons, because it's not all about going about the hard grind and having a really intense sort of high rocks sort of CrossFit session. It's making sure that we are listening to our bodies and making sure that we follow up with those key things that I just mentioned.
And thank you, Claire. And Janice, from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, I've heard a lot about like yin and yang concepts. Like, what is your experience and what you have seen?
Yeah, so maybe I don't know if it's surprising to people or not, but the TCM angle is very similar to what Claire just shared. So in TCM, we say that it's time for your body to store essence, not to spend it. So as Claire mentioned, the kind of lethargy, slow metabolism, all of these things are aligned in TCM. I guess also to add to that, immunity, right, is a big thing. And Claire, you mentioned serotonin, which is very much related to that. And actually, in TCM, we look at, you are right to point out yin and yang. So for those who are newer to TCM concepts, yin and yang are like kind of the moon and the sun, or like the feminine and the masculine. So they're opposing energies. And TCM is actually telling us that winter is where yin is more dominant. So what Claire said about having more gentle workouts, slower movements, all of that aligns very well. And I think a lot of people will also notice, especially I guess in the UK, where it's freezing outside and suddenly you've got indoor heating. Right. So all of these elements actually lead to like drier skin. People have different lotions for their body, for their faces, right, in the winter. And actually, from a TCM perspective, the lung system actually governs your skin and respiration. So we'll go into a little bit more detail later if we have time in terms of what we can do to strengthen the lung system, because this may help people, I guess, alleviate or soothe things like itchy skin, that kind of cough that's not from illness, but you just kind of cough because it's too dry. And also, I'll share later a little bit about what we are eating, because winter seasons generally affect your digestive system as well. So there's also a thing called digestive fire. So if you imagine you've got a log burner inside your system, everything has to be balanced. So in the winter, logically, because it's colder outside, your fire may reduce in heat. So this will affect your spleen, affect your stomach, all of that. So from my own personal experience, as well as looking at, poor victims around me who listen to me talk about TCM nonstop every day, I think there's a lot we can do actually by just looking at either, lifestyle habits and routines that Claire has mentioned, as well as what we can eat and drink before we, in the hopes of actually not getting ill. It's all about being preventative.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Janice. And I think we need to sort of think about as well metabolism and like appetite adjustments, because our bodies naturally crave warmth and energy dense foods, don't they, in the winter months? It's primal. And so, your body's trying to keep you cozy and fueled. And instead of fighting it, I think we need to really focus on nourishing it. And, I always suggest things like slow burn meals and training that does keep that metabolism just humming away, It's a nice combination.
Oh, I love that, because immediately in my mind I had a question like exactly as you said, Claire. In the winter, I'm be craving for like noodles and all of the fried food, and I feel worse when I have them. But I just can't stop feeling craving for them when I get hungry. So I think it's like it will be very interesting you know to know how can I adjust that. Like, is there any other food that I can eat instead to still feel good, but also like help myself with my own appetite.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, you want to eat for warmth, okay? So, I mean, we all have our own tastes and flavors that we love. But what I encourage during this season is swapping, like for breakfast, take for example, you want to swap like cold smoothies for maybe like warm oats and maybe a little sprinkle of cinnamon and some nuts and berries, or sort of egg-based breakfasts with avocados and some steamed spinach, something like that. And this is really key because it works really well because it's warm and it's protein-rich meals and they stabilize your blood sugar and your cortisol levels. And this helps your hormones as well stay balanced when your body naturally craves like comfort food. It's great to have these these dense, rich foods. Perhaps maybe just thinking for yourself, maybe a slightly healthier option. But we can certainly share some recipes for sure.
Amazing. I think I will apply that straight away this winter because I do want to get out of that trap, really. Helen, from your coaching experience, did you hear someone share, how their body changes, in the winter and all the, any challenges they have to face?
Yeah, definitely. And not just physical health, mental health. I think it's been well established. I'm a trustee at the local regional Hertfordshire Mind Network, and they put out information every year that's just acknowledging the challenge that is particularly in the parts of the world where we're losing daylight. It's not only a challenge for our body, it's also a challenge for our minds. So when people are coming to coaching with me with that challenge, the first thing I look to do is just have them acknowledge that's a real thing. It's not just you, it's been studied, it's been well observed. It is difficult, and I suppose it's tempting to see it purely as a Northern Hemisphere thing, but actually, I think it's about a quarter of the world's population have some sort of daylight savings that affect them and just change. Whether it's a change, so actually, a lot of the negative effects of daylight saving are seen in the spring when we lose an hour's sleep. It can have really brutal effects on us at all ages. I think it's in the States where they see a spike in car accidents and heart attacks and stroke when they go into that tends to be the other end of the year that's well observed. But obviously it gets, as the days get shorter, it's an adjustment for the human body and mind. And I think that humans are uniquely capable when it comes to adapting to change. The seasons are natural. We are really skilled as a species at adapting to changes throughout the year, but that doesn't mean we can do it without thinking about it. I think that the real secret's becoming clear to me is to be really purposeful about it.
Mhm.
Acknowledge the change is coming and decide what you're going to do about it rather than letting it happen to you and then wondering why you feel
Mm.
rubbish.
Yeah, I think Claire and Janice mentioned a lot about, nutrition, what's going to change in our body and our energy. Helen, can you add a little bit more about, the mental health perspective in the winter? Like, will the shorter days or, the lack of, sunlight, will that lead to any kind of mental health problems?
Well, it's not universal for everyone because,
Mm,
see, I've recently learned that we tend to think of seasonal affective disorder, which is an acknowledged condition where our mental health is clinically affected by a change in the season. Actually, doesn't happen to everyone in the winter. Some people have difficulties in the summer. That really surprised me. I've yet to really unpick it, but it is a thing. And but it is more common for people to feel like Claire mentioned, the drop in serotonin because the sunlight is what help us to release serotonin. I think vitamin D levels also go down. So half of my family are not of Northern European extraction, and they all have suboptimal vitamin D because in living in the Northern Hemisphere, there just isn't enough sun on their skin for them to getting through their skin for them to have adequate vitamin D. So I guess it's tempting to see physical health and mental health as really separate, but in coaching, it nearly always transpires that the expression that we were taught, I think, is an NLP expression about there being no Berlin Wall between the body and the mind. Absolutely true. So some of the ways that we can look after our mental health are first to address our really basic needs around movement, nutrition, but also I think in the winter, companionship and social interaction. It can be really difficult to get out and see people when it will involve putting on two jumpers and a coat. Um, Often for women, there is just the challenge of we don't go out so much in the dark for a variety of reasons, but a lot of them around social expectations and safety. So we can need to be more purposeful in the winter around planning social interaction because actually we are not designed to hibernate.
And so the next one is in terms of the winter routines over time. And I think it's amazing to have, you guys with us today because we are at different stages in life and you guys have experienced like a lot of things that myself and Janice haven't really experienced, for example, giving birth, going through all of those cycles. So do you feel that your winter routines have changed with age or experience? So for Claire and Helen, I think from your experience, after having birth, and I think Janice for you is going to be, from university
Just
town
getting older.
until today. No, we're not old yet, more mature, I think.
No, I always tell my parents who are well into their 60s, I'm like, you're not old. Like in this day and age, that's not old. That's the new middle age, in my opinion. Maybe I'll start because I think I will have less to say. I think, interestingly, when you talked about university, right? I remember the countless nights where I would go out in a short dress, don't need a coat.
I remember those days.
We'll just run to wherever I need to go to, and I can run in heels. Never, I touch wood, but I don't really get ill. I don't even catch a cold. So I think there's a lot to say about, when we are very, very young, or like young adults, we have so much, we just have a lot more resources in the body, right, to react to all of these external factors. We rely a lot more on adrenaline. Cortisol maybe has a less negative effect on us back then. I could be out until 3 in the morning, attend a 9 a.m. lecture. And remember, I told you guys before, I think I don't drink coffee. I have never had coffee in my whole life. Imagine doing that and having an economics lecture at 9 for 3 hours. It was all fine, right? But right now, I'm someone who has to have 8 hours sleep. And I'm in bed and asleep before 11 because in a TCM perspective, 11 to 1 a.m. is the start of your cleansing. So I think it's the liver that gets through the cycle first. So each 2-hour block, your body does something different for each organ. Even though I agree, Thao, we are not old. There's a phrase actually in Chinese called 养生 in Mandarin or 养生 in Cantonese. And it's the concept of actually nourishing life. So it's not even anti-aging, it's preventative, right? So the idea is you should be nourishing yourself with different ways as you go through different ages so that you age better in that sense. So personally, I don't like the term anti-aging because it's not physically possible. But in TCM, it's all about almost strengthening your foundation so that whatever you need to deal with, you can deal with them better. Claire, to your point about kind of doing less, maybe slowing down your pace generally, I think for sure over the years, I will no longer stay up until 2 a.m. working on a pitch deck because I know in the long run that is not good for me. So for me, I think I've learned that energy isn't about doing more. It's doing things wisely. And to Helen, your point, being more intentional about what you put energy in. And I think especially if we're talking about winter, it's like squirrels, right? Helen, you mentioned squirrels. Winter is when we store and nourish. It's not when we go and deplete everything we have. I remember during COVID, actually, I was watching some online webinars held by this TCM doctor. And he said, a very simple thing to incorporate more heat into your body is just to go out on your balcony, take your top off, get the sun on your back. Because naturally in the summer, it's the perfect heat source, right? It comes from nature. Obviously, apply sunscreen for obvious reasons. But I think when it's winter and we have much shorter days in the UK, we need to find different ways to maintain that level of heat in our systems. And in TCM, it's not always literal heat, it's figuratively speaking as well. And we can come back to that, I think, when we talk about practical tips.
Is there a time of the day that you can do that?
But I do that in the mornings. I don't remember if it was a conversation with you, Thao, or somebody else, but I try to get natural light in the morning, like first thing when I wake up. I know it's difficult in the winter, but actually, Helen, you mentioned seasonal affective disorder. Sorry, I'm going on a little bit, but a few years ago, I had to go through a hotel quarantine to go visit my family in Hong Kong. Luckily for me, it was reduced to 7 days. I was originally looking at 21 days in a hotel room with windows that I can't open. So in preparation for that, I actually ordered a SAD lamp for myself. So I found that really useful because I think, Tal, for as long as you've known me, I'm someone who's just like energy, 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 energy. And I was panicking. I'm going to be in a hotel room where I can't leave for 7 days. And unless it's facing the east, I probably won't have natural light. So that's something people can consider as well, I think. Helen, the grimace is correct. It was not pleasant. The positive of it is my parents they allow family members or friends to like drop off things at the hotel. I asked for exercise bands and a yoga mat, and I actually came out fitter than before I went in because I had nothing to do. I had work and I had workouts in one room. I did two actually. The first one was at the beginning of COVID. It was just a home quarantine, but I had an electronic bracelet like a criminal. And it was 14 days.
And a follow-up question though, Janice, because I know you do a lot of like gym and fitness stuff, right? How did that help you to maintain your well-being and your health over time?
I think, given the context that I am always busy, Tao, I am always busy. I think for me, actually going to the gym is mental hygiene. Having a routine when everything is chaotic. We mentioned COVID, right? A lot of people really struggled, I know, during lockdown. For me, exercise was one of the things that kept me quite sane. And I think with exercising, what I've learned over the years, I've tried many different kinds of exercises. You know your body better, actually, I think over time. I know, for example, I hate running. Um, I will do cardio because it's good for health, but then over the years, I've figured out what kind of cardio works for me. So I think exercising generally helps you just be more connected with yourself physically. And definitely that 1 hour or so, it's really helped with my mental hygiene. That's the 1 hour where, because see, the thing is with exercise, I find that if you are thinking about something else, it doesn't work, which means you have to clean your brain and really focus on the movement, the breathing, how are you feeling, your muscle engagement, everything. So at home, cooking does that for me. In the gym, doing weights does that for me. It helps me really kind of focus, but in a relaxed way, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense because the whole mind-body connection, isn't it?
I think definitely for the ones who are in their early 20s and don't think, like doing exercise or going to the gym is important, change your mind because they do, and they make you feel so much better. Even if it's just like 30 minutes or 1 hour per day, definitely they wouldn't bring the differences. And as we mentioned, gym, obviously, Claire, this is your space. And I'm sure that going to the gym and doing all those exercises, is part of your winter routines as well, right? Is there anything else that you do in the winter or anything that, has changed over the years for you?
Yeah. Well, for the gym, it's a lifestyle to me. It's not just a workout or getting fit. It's really about promoting longevity. So it's become a way of life for me. But thinking back to my earlier years, if I think back into my early 20s, very much like Janice was describing, you never felt the cold. I would go out in a short skirt and a top and no jacket and wouldn't come back for a couple of days, most likely. So it really didn't affect me like that. But when you're asking us to reflect on this question, I don't believe it has affected me that much. And the reason why I say this is because when I was living in the UK, so it was just after COVID, when we were allowed to meet up again with people, I got a little group together, a little community in my local village here in Bedfordshire. And I wanted women to join me in just walking, going outside. And I put a shout out on a Facebook page here in the village that we live in. And so many people were responding saying, love to come out for a walk with you. That'd be great. I think for the reason being that people were just craving to have human connection again and to actually get outside in nature. And I think it was such a pivotal time for us, that COVID experience, because it really made us reconnect again with nature. So this walking group that I founded, which after 5 years is still going to this day, every Sunday on the WhatsApp group, anyone walking today? And we're so honoured to live where we live because we live on a nature reserve. And so we had the most beautiful trekking and walking spaces. And this group that I formed was women of all different ages, different occupation, different cultures and backgrounds. And even though there was all of that, this walking on a Sunday morning where we could just leave and defunk, as I'd like to call it, just defunk and leave all the things that were weighing heavy on our shoulders, whether it were being, responsibilities, motherhood, partners, whatever. We would just walk and we would talk. And it was soul medicine. For the fact was that we were talking, had this mental connection. I think, and Helen, you touched on that earlier, how important that is in the winter months to have connection with people. But we actually went out every season. I mean, it was a couple of years and we were going through each season, spring, winter, summer and fall. And even in the winter months, I couldn't believe it. I would imagine every morning, every Sunday morning, I was expecting a call for people to start sort of dropping out. And I would just put a little heads up, always be the first one and say, anybody walking today? And I can probably imagine them groaning in their beds going, oh my God, Claire, it's snowing outside. But I'm like, come on, put on your snow boots. I'll meet you outside the church at 10 a.m. And that's what we did. And we'd be gone for hours. But if you're well insulated, and you've got the right clothing on, there is nothing more bloody magical than being outside in nature with all the elements and just talking and bloody laughing. Honestly, I couldn't even buy this kind of experience. It was so good. And like I said, after all these years, 5 years, the women are still walking every week. Even when I wasn't living in this country, I would still see their messages every Sunday saying, who's walking today? So going back to, has it evolved with age and my experience? I don't think it has. I think now I don't take it for granted. And I know how important and how wonderful the experience is of getting outside in whatever season and moving your body.
I love that so much, Claire. I think you are exactly a friend that everyone needs, like, to keep the momentum and encourage people to be disciplined.
For sure. And I think it's when everybody gets a benefit from it and a purpose from it, it's truly magical.
Was there any routines, like, for example, like the old routine that you had before you give birth? Or is there any new routine that you have in the winter after you give birth?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So like I think that when you have small children, when they see the first snowflake, they are so excited. I mean, you can absolutely forget
I
it.
still get excited.
I was thinking that's
You can
Janice.
absolutely,
Just keep hold of that, Janice. It's good for your mental health, staying in touch
I'm
with
a
your inner
very
child.
excitable person.
You keep hold of that. It's invaluable.
it is wonderful. As soon as they would open their curtains in the morning, then they'd see the snowflakes. That's it. We'd be able to go out and try and construct some kind of snowman with as little snow as possible. So, in terms of being outside, I would say that it hasn't changed in terms of raising small children and then becoming, teenagers. It's always been a case of being very outdoorsy. What I will say now, in this kind of chapter of my life, is that, do you know what? I do actually prefer um, a slightly slower morning, like more recovery after I've done a workout, and just to kind of have more purpose, and be more smarter about like how I start my days and my exercises now. That's what I would say. But when I talk about a slower morning, it's not because I'm getting older. It's because my responsibilities have changed. I've only got myself to answer to. So like my children are now young men. They're adults. They don't live with me anymore. So I only have myself to focus on. So that's where I could say to you that the experience has changed. And when I say to you about leaning into slower mornings, it's not about staying in bed till 10 a.m. I still get up at the same time, but it's my rituals that I really enjoy. I always start my day with hot water and lemon, have done for about 15 years. And then I go on to my little coffee process, and then I do my oatmeal in the winter season. So I love that. I love that kind of slower morning because it's my morning, and I deserve it after all these years.
Slightly different for me because actually, while I was nodding along and I have a lot of shared experiences with Claire and Janice about, for me, Janice, it wasn't a short skirt. I just spent the whole time with a push-up bra on all through my life. They were never away. I look back at the photos now and I'm like, my heaven's sake, Helen, were you never
Hey,
cold?
girls.
Just the whole time. Anyway, so that has changed. They do spend less time facing the sun. Maybe that affects my vitamin D intake. I should look into that. But the difference was I wasn't a particularly well young person. Now, in common with most young people, I probably bounce back from things a bit quicker than I potentially would now. But actually, I'm healthier now at nearly 50 than I was at nearly 30. And part of that is because for me, motherhood profoundly affected me because I took really good care and took the time to get to know my son's needs. And genetically, it turned out we have a lot in common that I had never known about myself. So I didn't know that I had ADHD until I discovered my son has ADHD. I didn't really know how to look after an ADHD mind and body until I learned to do that for my child. We both also have symptomatic hypermobility. Again, I did not know that I had that because I'd never lived in anyone else's body, so I didn't know what a normal body felt like. And my son's physiotherapist telling me, "Oh, you're where that comes from. I can tell that just by how you walked in," was really revelatory. And probably the other really profound effect parenthood had on me was I don't think I felt undue pressure to look after myself when it was just me. But as soon as I learned when Bodhi was about 3, they do what you do.
Mm.
I realized that if I wanted him to be someone who took pleasure in moving his body, that I would have to model that. And also that if he was running up a hill or climbing a climbing frame, I didn't want to be at the bottom, unable to join him. So for me, probably things really changed, but for the unusually in many ways, because actually it is really traumatic. I mean, totally recoverable. I totally wouldn't not recommend it to people, but it is pretty traumatic having a person come out of you. So it's not like it has no effect on you. And the fact they won't let you sleep for blinking ages definitely does age you. But
For
you
18
can
years,
recover.
you mean?
Honestly, I think in about 2 years of no sleep, I probably looked about 10 years older. I had looked really young until I had my child. And
You
then,
still look young.
You're all very charming people.
You
But
are,
you
you
really
are.
do see the difference when
Mm.
you're not allowed to sleep for a couple of years.
Mm.
That was my first clue that my child had ADHD. But for me, I'm probably pretty unusual because I think now I am probably in better shape than I have ever been because I've learned a lot about how to look after the body I have
Yeah, me.
and the mind that I
So, slight sidebar. Talking about recovery. So I have not personally given birth, but I wanted to share in Chinese culture how this whole topic is managed. So I will put a big disclaimer that this is not done by all Chinese women everywhere, but for the people that I know who live in China and Hong Kong, this is a very standard practice. So once mum gives birth, we actually have a whole month where we call, in English it's confinement, but in Chinese it's called sitting moon, I guess, lunar cycle. So basically, for the first 30 days after giving birth, you don't do anything because either you have a kind of wet nurse, but not for feeding purposes. Let's just call her a wet nurse, or family members like your mum, your husband's mum, whatever. They will help take care of baby and you, and you eat one chicken a day for 30 days. I don't know in ancient times how this was dealt with for vegans and vegetarians, but the idea is you will take those 30 days to prioritize on your recovery. So you still have baby and mum time. You still do the feeding, you still do all of that, but at night someone else will deal with the baby when it wakes up. And then there are these centers usually connected to hospitals where you go live there for those 30 days. And for my sister-in-law, for example, her first child was born before COVID, second one during, so she didn't get the luxury of this. But for the first one, I went to visit her, and basically every day there will be a nurse who comes to help you either do massages to help you produce milk, teach you how to latch, and there's a doctor that comes check you every day, and every single meal is balanced through TCM. So they will actually look at you today and decide what you need to eat today in a full-on TCM way. Those 30 days, I think it's minimal hair washing because it's believed that you introduce a lot of coldness, right,
Mm.
through wetting your hair. And then you can't eat cold foods. So literally cold, but also in a TCM sense cold. And there's a bunch of things, but that's the whole package of how mums recover post birth. So when I listen to my friends who don't do that, I'm like, oh God, what happens if, you know, how good would it be if we introduced even 10% of this to the rest of the world?
I think it's in our generation, it's become more and more common, and that's also
Mm.
happening in Vietnam as well.
Everything you do and eat and drink is to deal with that physical trauma. So it's to um, nourish your blood, is to tonify your blood. Whatever that needs to come out will be encouraged to come out, and it's to kind of refill you, basically. That is your only focus. The first 30 days, fix yourself so that you can do whatever comes in the next 18 years.
Yeah.
So
And it's actually a very big
Wow.
business in China at the moment around
it
that.
is. It is. Yeah.
Like all the fancy five-star hotel, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds like a bit like some of my Dubai friends. It's that they have, like nurses at night time, so they haven't got to wake and do the night feeds. I
mm,
mean, it's a very different experience to what I had. I mean,
Mm.
I couldn't wait to get home when I had my second son. I couldn't wait to get home and be with my other son so we could all be together. I can't imagine that. I tell you what thing I was really grateful for actually was when I was breastfeeding my second son because I couldn't successfully breastfeed my first. And I just persevered with breastfeeding the second one. I was my body was craving food. So when you're talking about nutrition and you're talking about fueling your body, you're absolutely right. And I remember saying to my dad, earlier we talked about like warm, dense food. I remember saying to my dad, please, can you just make me a beef casserole and dumplings and bring it round? And I remember he did, and he brought it round in this big kind of like Pyrex dish. And I literally sat and I just, ate the whole thing because, my body was absolutely craving it. But I never had time to sort of down tools, having like a newborn and a 2-year-old and boys. It was pretty full on, yeah, I have to say.
I think just like there's so many questions I want to ask, especially around like giving birth and stuff. Now you trigger me. Literally, I've got
Are you
so
sure?
many
We do
questions.
a whole nother episode on giving birth and babies.
I think so. I think so. I do want another one. Someone is pregnant in the winter. Is there any tips like you have, for example, like what kind of exercise they can do, what kind of food that they should eat? I know like, there won't be probably a lot of advice out there, but from your own experience.
So I didn't know I had symptomatic hypermobility, but what I do know is that all women become more flexible and their hips become more floaty and mobile when they are pregnant, because by necessity the hormones are released that loosen everything up so that you can, well, get a person out of you. And that's why pregnant women, it's one of the reasons pregnant women are more prone to falls. So I guess that the slippy, slidey, muddy, or icy or snowy months, I think that I seem to remember that did present a challenge, even though I was quite early on in pregnancy. And now I realise that was because for me, that stretchy, flexible joints thing will have started literally the minute I was pregnant. And I fell down a couple of times, and it can be quite scary. So yeah, I think that taking care of yourself, allowing yourself more time, I guess what Janice and you have shared, Thao, about this idea of, it sounds like an acknowledgement that actually making a whole new person and then getting them into the world is actually quite a big deal, even though it's natural, and even though women have been doing it for millennia. That's all very well and good, but just because it's natural and normal, it doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, lots of things are natural and normal, but it doesn't mean they're a walk in the park. And I really like the cultural reference points you've changed, that you've shared, that seem to acknowledge that difficulty. And I think that's probably the advice I'd give to someone who may be about to or has recently discovered that they're pregnant, is your body is doing a job of work, and so is your mind. And it's okay to acknowledge that this is a huge change, and again, to be purposeful, give yourself time, have patience with yourself.
Thank you, Helen. And I think it's great to see, right, how people's mindset has changed over time. Now they are more aware of the importance of their own health.
The one my sister-in-law stayed at wasn't a hotel. It's a next to the main hospital complex.
Yeah.
But it was like a 4-bedroom apartment. So my brother went to stay there the whole month with his wife. And when we visited, we also had a room to stay. And so hair washing is a big thing in Chinese culture. Like Chinese New Year
Yeah,
Day, you're not
same.
supposed to wash your hair. So there's a lot of superstitions as well as the health reasons where hair washing is a big deal. And they send someone to come wash your hair.
Oh, lovely.
But it's a specific like TCM herbal mix that's meant to
Oh,
again introduce heat and healing to your system. It's a whole wild thing, and maybe I don't know, maybe people can look into giving birth in China. I don't know, or introducing the service here. Like, I've always thought actually a lot of mums that I know at work in the UK, to be fair, in a lot of multinational companies, you get a very long mat leave. But
yeah.
I still think culturally, it's still like you've now had a person come out of you, chop chop, on you go,
Yeah,
get on with life. And I find that such a struggle in my head of like, but that just happened.
yeah.
Like that just came out, and you're supposed to what, snap back and do it.
I think that's what I would share with younger women now, if this is about to happen
Mm,
for them, or they're wondering how it will feel. It's just because that's
mm,
what society or the work world expects of you, does
mm,
not mean that's reasonable. We have
mm,
lots of unreasonable expectations for our fellow humans. I think it's okay to say, actually, I can't just snap back. Actually, that's not Or at least if you're compelled to do it by necessity, to be kind to yourself and acknowledge that it is an unreasonable expectation. And if you pull it off, then well done you, but you should give yourself kudos for doing that. When you're talking about I love the expression sitting moon. Confinement sounds like prison. Sitting moon
Yeah.
sounds elegant, right? And mystical. When you're talking about being very careful about what mum eats and drinks, and Claire, you were talking about breastfeeding, really resonated with me, because actually when my son was born, it's quite common for people with ADHD and hypermobility, it's commonly co-occurring to have early allergies, and he was allergic to everything. And he was allergic to dairy and soya and egg whites and citrus. He's grown out of them all now, but I didn't follow any of the conventional advice. I had a bit of a kind of like rage of independence, and thought that the conventional advice on how to deal with it seemed ridiculous, which was to move him onto a hypoallergenic formula, all of which were made with either dairy or soya, the two things he is allergic to, rather than breastfeeding, and to wean him early onto food, solid food, even though he was allergic to almost everything. So instead, what I said was, no, I'm going to give up all of the foods that he's allergic to. And I'm actually going to extend the breastfeeding period for as long as is safe to do. And actually, that's quite a long time. Babies can do really well on just breast milk for a long time. So several doctors said, oh, you couldn't possibly, how will you live without cheese? And it turns out it is. I mean, maybe now that being vegan is much more socially acceptable in England and seen as a much less radical thing, they would be a bit better about it. But of all the children that I met in his kind of age group, because you use social media as a new mum to find other parents whose babies are having the same problems. Of his whole cohort, he's the only one who completely outgrew all of his allergies by 5 or 6 years old. Most of them still now, as he's 13, have residual allergies of some sort or another. And I was the only one that said, no, actually, I'm not doing any of those things. I'm going to do something completely different. And you can all think I'm crazy if you want to. But I'm convinced this is the way to go. I'm always going to wonder if there was a connection, because he just didn't have any of the things he was allergic to. And I think it's really makes a lot of sense to be very mindful and purposeful about what you're putting in when you are also feeding that to your new baby.
Breastfeeding is always the best, as I was told. Much better than
Yeah,
any
I
kind
just
of
do want to
formula
say
milk.
though that I really loved it. It was very difficult at the beginning. Like Claire, when you said like with your first that I was like, oh yeah, I just think we were like 10 minutes from me giving up because the latching is so really challenging. Again, now I know that he had probably tongue tie, because that's really common with symptomatic hypermobility. I didn't know that at the time, and it was all very difficult. So yes, breastfeeding is wonderful. I would recommend it to anyone, because although it's very difficult at the beginning, let's not pretend it's not difficult. Some people seem to just get straight into it, but they are few and far between. The rest of us struggle, and it's really hard. It's much easier later on, right? Like when you don't have to sterilize things, and it's always just with you, and you haven't got to remember to take anything. And if you happen to get a child with allergies, that's not a problem, because it's like, it's okay, I've got his food here, or her food here. So I would say yes, I know we've all been told breast is best, but also I've got absolutely no judgment to make on anyone who has to choose another way of doing it, because fed is best.
Yeah. No, you're right, because I remember, Helen, even with my first, I had such good intentions to breastfeed him, and I was becoming very stressed with not being able to manage it. And I really did give myself a hard time, actually, because I thought, oh gosh, he's not getting the best, I can't do it. I couldn't get him to latch on properly, and I was very stressed about it. And with the second one, maybe I was just more relaxed. I don't know. Maybe I had just adapted to motherhood. Been a mum for a couple of years with the firstborn, and maybe I was just in a different mindset. But he latched on okay. But what's really sort of like funny to this day is my second son is like 6'3", and my eldest son is 6 foot. And I often think to myself, God, if I had breastfed the first one, maybe he would have grown an extra 3 inches. I always think that because you think you're giving him the best from you. I think that the second one is obviously a lot taller. He grew a lot faster. And I thought that's down to breast milk. But you have to just not worry about that and get consumed by that because you have to do the best for you as well. The best for you as a mother. Because if you're going to beat yourself up over something like that, that's not healthy for anybody. That is going to also feed, that anxiety is also going to feed into your child. It's going to have a ripple effect. Don't punish yourself if you can't do it.
Right. So I think let's move on to the part that we will have some scenario-based questions. So we've got some questions from our community, and I would love to get your help. How can I boost my immunity without taking a ton of supplements?
So in TCM, everything is about balance. So too much or too little of either side of things equals bad. In winter, if we talk about this kind of more in layman's terms, or even in like a more mainstream nutrition sense, you are expending more because it's colder. Your body needs to maintain your metabolism, everything needs to happen. So in order to make sure that we are doing that from a food and drinks perspective, what Claire mentioned, having warmer meals, 100%. I cannot, for the life of me, understand people who eat ice cream in the winter. It seems completely counterintuitive to me. But Thao, I think you mentioned before that sometimes you will crave really heavy foods.
Mm.
One suggestion is if you can tolerate it, there are other foods that could give you that warmth without that level of fat and grease. So ginger is always a good shout. Ginger is important in TCM for multiple reasons, for multiple types of body constitutions. So a simple ginger broth, and in TCM, what I notice is there's never a big kind of demonization of sugar because each type of sugar does have its own benefit as long as you're not overdoing it. So you can make yourself a sweet ginger tea to start your morning. You can add ginger into broths. So ginger is kind of a fix-all in that sense. And then also in terms of having warm foods, I think Thao, if you remember in the office, I'm that weirdo who drinks warm water. Uh, Nobody else I know in the office does. That's also advised from a TCM perspective. So room temperature is okay, but better if it's warm. And generally more hydration is good. There are some drinks you can make with ingredients you can buy in normal supermarkets that maybe we can share afterwards.
Yes, please.
Soups, massive in TCM culture as well. My mum always has a different soup depending on what I tell her about how I feel. So if I feel, sometimes you feel the kind of thirsty where no matter how much water you drink, you're still thirsty. Or some people wake up with that kind of bad breath feeling coming from their throat, or dry eyes. So in TCM, this is where it's not about water hydration. It's actually a different concept entirely, where I guess if you translate it quite literally, it's your life essence is being depleted. So there will be drinks like teas or broths, etc., which help you regenerate more. I always prefer not to prescribe things to people. I prefer to educate and share so
Mm.
that people make their own connections with how they're feeling.
Yeah.
Because there's no one size fits all, I think.
Mm.
Certain people will react differently to ginger. And for example, I had a very different body constitution when I was a teenager. So not only did I have chocolate cysts in both ovaries, I was always, cold hands, cold feet. I had really terrible period cramps. Like it's all aligning with a colder body constitution. But then since I've moved here, maybe I've grown out of it, or it's because exercise became part of my routine. I really strengthened my own body. I now no longer have any of these problems. Right, my hands are always warm, even in the winter. I sleep well. So I guess the final statement on my answer is I think don't, and I think Helen, you mentioned something earlier about really taking back the control and not let things happen to you. So I think with, Claire, with what you do, Helen, with what you do, and with kind of from a TCM perspective, I think it's really important for people to really get to know their bodies, take all of this information, do what you will with them. But the most important thing is to remember you can change it. Like it's not the life sentence, in my opinion. First, know how you feel, and then figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janice. And I think the last question that I have is, what is your advice for people in the winter to take care of their health and their loved ones' health as well? So if there's like, 3 pieces of advice, what would you tell them?
3 pieces of advice, and we've spoken a lot of it over the last hour, is it's the season where we need to keep moving and not be against it. So your body's energy will naturally dip in the winter months. So instead of fighting it, flow with it. And as I said earlier on, swap out cardio for strength and low mobility exercise, and that will keep your metabolism ticking over and that'll keep boosting your mood. And we've talked about feeding your body like you love it, so we don't need to touch upon that anymore. We've talked about the hearty comfort foods, and again, this is not just for yourself, but also for your family. So think about those soups and those root vegetables and the good fats that keep that energy steady, and that will help you from spiking and crashing throughout the day. And I think lastly for me is just protect your light, literally and mentally. We know we've talked about already that less sunlight can create a mess, and with no serotonin and our sleeps and our moods all being affected by it is absolutely key. And do you know what I do actually? I actually found this out a couple of years ago when I started working from home, is I would sit very closely to the window. So if I was working on the laptop, I would be, right up against the window so I could even feel any kind of sunlight. I'd open the window and just get any kind of sunlight on me at all. So even if you're working from home, that's what I would do. And also just going back to just a quick touch on what Helen was talking about in terms of supplements and vitamin D. It's so key. And this is what I was recommended when I was living in Dubai even. And you can imagine that there's lots of vitamin D there with sunlight and things like that. But vitamin D, if you don't want to take it as part of a supplement, start really looking at your food. So looking at all foods that support your immunity. It could be, your salmon, your mackerel, it could be egg yolks, plant-based milks, all those kind of things. So I think your vitamins and your minerals are crucial. And if you don't want to take them in supplements, make sure that where you can achieve those in food forms.
I'm no nutritionist, but I have found something of a revelation in the improvement in my own immune system when I radically reduced ultra processed foods.
Mm.
The change in my health is quite startling. I my diet was never riddled with ultra processed foods. We weren't a junk food family, especially not once my son came along, because I had to cook everything from scratch because he was allergic to everything. So we did have a lot, and I come from a farming family, and there's a lot of home cooking done in farming families. So it wasn't even like I had a diet that was dominated by ultra processed foods, but really reducing them mindfully. And again, I did have to make a plan. Like, I do work full time and I'm a parent, so I'm not pretending that it was a walk in the park. Like, I make my own bread, and I'm not going to lie, that does take a little bit of planning. But with practice and a plan, actually, it's not even that inconvenient. And I can't say, it's really hard to quantify how much better my health is personally, particularly around my immune system, since I gave up ultra processed foods.
I hear you there, Helen. 100%. I've had my own personal experience. I think that's probably another episode but you're absolutely right. Ultra processed foods have got to go out the window. You feel so better, don't you, in yourself, and especially as a woman. And I think maybe probably as well as you become a woman of a certain age, the less bloating and things like that you have as well, and the amount of energy that you gain from eating cleanly.
Yeah, I just felt I have found I have been much more able to beat off illnesses.
Mm.
Maybe I think that's something that it's taken me time to learn is I think when I was younger, I thought that nourishing myself and getting the body and health that I wanted would be about what I put in. And as I've got older, I've realized it's also quite a lot about what you leave out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are some things you don't want to be putting in, at least not with any, I'm not saying never, but not with regularity.
Back to my TCM hat. I think I also kind of got to this point when I turned 30, which is sometimes needs come over fashion. Uh, so, Claire, we mentioned short dresses. Helen, you mentioned the push-up bra. In Chinese medicine perspective, it's not even about modesty. The key parts to keep warm when you're out and about are your neck, your core, and your lower back and your knees. Because those are places where wind gets in the easiest into your system and where you lose heat. So I would say for women who still want to look amazing, put a scarf on, take it off when you're inside. If you want to wear a short skirt, put some tights on. There are fantastic pretend see-through tights now, which are actually thermal lined.
Yeah.
So keep those spots, tuck your top into your skirt or your trousers. And personally, I found that that's been quite useful. That's something that women in my culture, in my surroundings, have done through generations, right? And I think it's easy enough to do.
Great. Thank you so much all for joining me today once again. And to our listener, thank you for joining us for our first episode of the Seasons Within. We will see our guests again in the new year as we continue exploring wellness in spring. Until then, keep warm, take care of your health, and enjoy the rest of 2025. And don't forget to join our global community where you can connect with our guest speakers and access useful life skills resources to support your wellness journey and beyond. See you next time.